You had said you spent over $1 million on your own professional development. In what areas did you focus on that had the highest ROI for you?
Spend as much makes you uncomfortable. For me, like, it's been being a part of the masterminds, it's being part of the courses and the relationships that I have put into my corner. It's impossible to put a price tag on those. Right now, I'm a part of a program called OPM. It's at Harvard. It's this high-level executive education where you go and you live at Harvard for 3 weeks a year straight for 3 years. Out of the 165 people in my group, there's probably close to 50 billionaires. But more importantly, you live there 3 weeks straight and have every meal and exercise and activity with people that would not regularly have time. The relationships, like I said, that I've been able to just harness are unbelievable.
You're listening to the Born Primitive Podcast. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Born Primitive Podcast. How we doing, Big Tony?
Morning, Bear. Doing good.
How's the West Virginia Mountaineers doing?
They looked terrible versus Penn State. Week two they looked a little less bad, but it was also not anyone special that they played. So we'll see. Here's my prediction. They'll get to week 8. They'll crack the top 25, have a shitty loss, and finish right about there. That's usually about the Mountaineers right there.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, hope it works out. All right, everybody. Today's guest, super excited about this one. We got a very successful entrepreneur. His name is Chris Lee. Chris is the founder and CEO of Next Level Pros, which is a business accelerator focused on growth through private equity and education. Chris also launched Solgen Power in 2017, which became the 6th fastest growing private company in the U.S. before selling it. It was a 9-figure exit in just under 5 years, which is wild. He's also a dedicated family man and the host of the Founder Podcast. He's an international speaker known for his expertise in company culture, team building, and training top sales forces. Lives with his wife and 5 kids on a 23-acre farm in Washington State. And I believe there was also a second 9-figure exit in there. So I don't want to leave that out. So a lot we can learn from this one, particularly on the company culture side. So Chris, welcome to the Born Primitive Podcast, man.
Excited to be here.
So there's a lot to get into, but I want to first ask, give us a quick background on yourself, and particularly what catapulted you to be a very successful entrepreneur. And I guess, what was that first business as well?
Man, I've owned a bunch of different businesses, and I wish I would say the first one was a massive success. It wasn't. It was a failure. I launched my first business at age 24 in the home security and automation space back in 2008. And tried growing too fast, too quick. Obviously, economy was sucking then. I was a college dropout with like a big head and thought I had it all figured out. And 2.5 years later, found myself filing bankruptcy for $2.2 million. Lost everything. Car repoed out of the driveway. Less than $1,000 in bank account. But the cool thing is like you asked, like what led to some of my successes later in life. I think a lot of it is just where I'm at from a centered standpoint. I'm a family man. Got married when I was 21 years old. I have 5 kids, and so highly focused on my family, my God, and like centering everything around that. And so, like when I went through bankruptcy, we had our 3rd child on the way. Most people would probably be fretting quite a bit. And the cool thing I learned during that time was, like, although it was the worst moment in my life, the worst case scenario isn't nearly as bad as what we imagine it to be. I still have my God, have my family, and had all my experience that took me to the bottom. And so luckily I made the choice not to go back to college like everybody was saying, go get a normal job, all the things, and continue the entrepreneurial career, and just kept going, kept trying to figure things out, and opened a lot of different businesses along the way, and learned a lot from mentors, spent a lot of money on coaching and consulting and stuff until 2017, launched a business out of my garage, completely bootstrapped. We operated for 2.5 years out of my garage, while we were headquartered out of my shop. We did, I think, $75 million in sales over the first 2.5 years of business. And just, obviously there's a lot that goes into all of that. Eventually, in under a 5-year span, we were flipping at 233 million a year, and we eventually sold off to private equity for a 9-figure exit. Um, but yeah, man, that's kind of the condensed professional journey over 20 years. But there's been a lot of just fun experiences along the way that have led to that, and that really still keep me in the game today, because I learned a long time ago that money isn't everything, and that's not the only reason to do stuff. I'm really all about just figuring out how to level up my game one day at a time.
Well, that's fascinating. I think there's a couple themes I'd like to extract there. Believe it or not, my first business, well, I'm not counting my lawn mowing business, which I had through college, but my first real business was a failed business as well. We got about $110,000 in capital, and just it didn't go as planned. We didn't assess the market properly. We had a few things that just went wrong that were out of our control. And I think, I mean, it's a lot of people, I think, go into, entrepreneurial, endeavors thinking it has to be a success, right? And as you probably would attest, you learn so much from doing, getting kicked in the pants and having to, go through the process of failure. I mean, you had to do bankruptcy. Fortunately, we got to avoid that. But so much was learned when my first business failed that I immediately pivoted, and Born Primitive was born, like, while that was actually still occurring. And most people might, kind of fold their hand and just be like, all right, I'm out of the game. I tried and went for it. So cool to see. I mean, what a turnaround. You're a college dropout filing bankruptcy. You got few kids now. So what was did you go get a 9-to-5 to kind of hold you over, or did you just go right back, double down? What's the next business?
Yeah, so when I filed bankruptcy, I immediately started another business in the same industry, because I knew what I had done wrong. I had bad partnerships. I had done things to impress other people. I had priced ourselves, to be competitive from a pricing standpoint, paid guys way too much, all the different things. So basically, just completely revamped, went at it a completely different strategy. But so I got right back into business for myself with a different partner. And we grew that to where it was sustainable, it paid the bills and everything else, but we were scared of growth. And there was just very small thinking, very micromanaged, where, like, previously, like I said, I tried going real big, real quick, and so kind of just aired on the opposite end, and tried my hand at a bunch of different things during that time. I started a search engine optimization business, a coupon book, flipped cars, flipped houses, flipped crap on eBay, just a bunch of different things to, like, identify value creation, what works, what doesn't work. And then I came to the realization, like, man, I don't know everything. I freaking suck at this. And in order to be able to go to get back in the game and do it at a big level, I've got to go and study someone that's doing it the right way. Um, so there was two big changes I shifted in my life. One, I started self-educating and reading books, buying courses, going to events and masterminds. And then two, I went back to work for somebody else for a period of 4.5 years. And with the pure intention to study how these high growth businesses were operating. And so over 4.5 years, I worked for 3 different businesses with exact intentionality of why I was there. Like, each one, I had a specific reason to be there and a specific leader that I wanted to study. And so during that time, made some good money. I was averaging probably 400 to 500 grand a year over those 4.5 years, getting back on my feet from all the failures or the just lackluster efforts. But learned a crap ton about building culture and proper strategy and just really everything that I now build my businesses off of. And so during those 4.5 years, I experienced 2 different IPOs. I was on Wall Street for one of them because I was a high level executive at one of those businesses. and got introduced into a couple new industries. And so yeah, that was life between 2012 and the end of 2016. And then I walked away, and people thought I was crazy. I had really one of the best VP jobs there was, unlimited company credit card, great compensation, right? I was traveling the world, doing cool things like going to baseball games and steakhouses with recruits and just different stuff. Like really like kind of picture perfect uh, employee life, and not a lot of risk, but I knew that I'd gotten everything that I needed from those previous experiences, and I was ready to go and figure out what I wanted to do next. I just walked away, and people are like, "What are you gonna do next?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just know I'm gonna do something different." And I've learned everything I need to learn. And so yeah, that was the end of 2016, and then I spent the next year kind of applying different principles that I knew, and finalizing a couple last things that I needed to understand. I spent some money on a Facebook advertising course. I tried my hand at a bunch of different things until I was like, all right, I know exactly what I'm going to do. And then fall of 2017, a year after I'd walked away from that business, we launched out of my garage, Solgen Power. And the rest is history. It was obviously a lot of work, but we bootstrapped that thing, took on zero outside debt, and scaled that thing, like I said, to 1,100 employees before exiting in 2022.
I would love, and you referenced it a couple of times there, of how you kind of have a playbook now when you're approaching a new venture. And I would love a trend I've found amongst people that I really look up to and study is that it seems you reach a point where you kind of develop your own personal philosophy. And of course, this is pulled from all kind of different things that resonate with that individual. But I would love to hear kind of what is your personal philosophy then also, and I'm sure there's overlap here, but what is then your professional philosophy? And that can be how you approach starting something new or just running something that has been established for a couple of years now. But would love to hear kind of both those and the overlap between the two of Chris Lee's personal philosophy, but then also his business philosophy.
Yeah, so there's a lot of them. I wish I could wrap them up into like two or three. So, but I'll tell you kind of my main. Anytime I go into a business, whether as a consultant or starting a business from scratch, I'm looking at everything under the framework of what I call the COLE framework. It's culture, offer, accountability, and leadership. And addressing culture first, because I'm a big believer that culture is the number one driver for any strategy that you're going and executing on. You can have the best strategy in the world and a terrible culture, and you're not going to get anywhere. And so, I mean, if you're asking my core philosophy, like I'm going to pull out, I don't know if you can see this or not. It doesn't look like you
It's
can.
just all white on the screen.
It's all white. Dang you, camera. Dang it. But yeah, so like, I mean, I have like all my core philosophies that I just keep in my phone that I constantly reference. Like, I mean, for example, I mean, there's some basic ones like you put your business first, then your employees, then your customers, where a lot of people operate the opposite. It's customer, then employee, then business. And I'm a big believer that you've got to, like, if you can't run a highly profitable business, you're not going to be able to afford to take care of your employees. And if you can't take care of your employees, they won't take care of your customers. Another core philosophy is your competition isn't what you think it is. A lot of people, when they're positioning themselves in the market, they look at like everybody else that's making the same offer that they are, and they try positioning their pricing like in accordance. Okay, what is this person offering? How are they priced? How are they structured? That's not competition. Competition in any industry is actually just the pain that the customer is feeling, and so I'm a big believer that you're in competition with that pain, and that you should ignore everything else that is going on from other people that are trying to offer to the same pain, and simply identify pain and provide the best solution that's for your business. And so because of that, like I'm able to be in our business, Solgen Power, we were a solar installation, sales, marketing, finance, the top to bottom, A to Z business. And, you know, solar is very commoditized. Like everybody's installing the same panels, like trying to sell to the same solution. But because of this philosophy, we went to market and charged twice as much as the nearest competitor. And why? Because we didn't believe we were in competition with anybody else. We were simply identifying pain of the customer, solving the pain of lack of ownership and control, and being able to create clean energy, or whatever the pain that existed for that individual. Because when somebody identifies that they are drowning, right? Like a lot of people are treading water and don't even realize it. But when you properly, as a salesperson, identify that they are drowning and that they're struggling and they're going through, and you offer them a solution of a life preserver, they're not going to say, hold on, what's your Google rating? They're not going to say, hold on, tell me more about this product. They're not going to say, how does this compare against your competitors? They're going to say, give me that dang thing, I'm dying. Right. Like, and so like, that's a core philosophy in any business, that if you can properly identify the pain that you're solving, it doesn't matter where you're priced, whatever else. And then it's your moral obligation to be the highest price and to provide the very best product and service for that price, so that you can afford to take care of your bottom line, which takes care of your employees, which takes care of your customers.
So let's double tap on culture a little bit. Or let's use an ideal. You've had several different ventures, which you've talked about. Talk about some of the things that make a great culture, and talk about some of the things that you think can make a culture that kind of eats itself.
Yeah, for sure. So like a culture is having part of an incredible culture is having a common purpose, a vision, a direction, a mission for the business, not just something that's on the wall that like is flowery statement or whatnot, but like it's a true buy-in to a direction that the business is going, along with a purpose behind that direction. And with that is typically governed by a set of core values. And like, for example, the core values that I have always established in building culture is that my people are there for more than a paycheck. My job as the CEO of the business is to help them be better physically, be better with their economics, not only in receiving a paycheck, but the way that they invest it, deploy it, budget it, take care of their financial betterment, their associations. So being better fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, contributors to society, and then identifying and developing out their spiritual beings. And so for me, when I focus on that and I teach that and I compensate people with more than a paycheck, the buy-in to wherever the vision and the direction of the business is like tenfold. You no longer have to worry about losing key players. You no longer have to worry about paying your people the most. You no longer have to do these things because you're compensating them in so many other ways. Like example, in my business, we would host what we call Financial Fridays. Every Friday over lunch, I would go and I would teach anybody that was physically there and other people that wanted to tap in on Zoom how to take care of their finances, where they can invest, how they could become a millionaire on any level of income, how they could properly budget, utilize debt the right way, not the wrong way, just things like that. And so people, like, when they're coming in, like once again, it's no longer how much am I getting paid? It's like, man, I am going to be taught by some of the greatest minds in the world how to take care of my family, how to be a better contributor to society. And so I think, like, my mission to the world is how to change that type of internal culture, because I believe we're in a day where society's just royally screwed up, right? Like, people don't know what gender they are. There's meddling in elections throughout the world. Freaking education system is completely broken. Like, everything terrible about that could be wrong with the society is wrong with our society. And the only way that we're going to change that is through entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurs have the biggest grip on society. Everybody initially comes in because they have to pay bills. And so if we can shift that, like use that grip to our advantage and actually fundamentally change society, like we can go and impact the world at a much greater rate than running for president or whatever else that we try to do to go and change it, or picketing on the streets, like all that crap that sucks. Like go and fundamentally change the fabric. And so like for me, like that's culture. Culture is changing the way that we operate the world.
Well, that's cool, because I think some people might counter what you said and say, there's, if there's 8 hours in the day and you hold a 90-minute finance class, that, hey, that's 90 minutes. You don't have 40 employees that could be building, going for, sales outreach and building the business. But I love what you said about, kind of, you're just adding additional value. So as they assess their employment, they're not just looking at their paycheck. They're looking at, okay, I now am more financially savvy. They've taught me about, maybe strength and conditioning and nutrition and any other components of wellness that you might insert into their day to just make them a better person overall. And then you get that probably tenfold on the back end with buy-in, but also them just being a better functioning human. You know what I mean? Like if we did a workshop, Tony, on hydration and sleep, quality, you know what I mean? And that stuck with 40% of our employees, like you'd probably see that in production, like, with people like getting more rest and realizing, all right, get off the blue light and get your nerdy yellow lenses that Tony has, all these like little things. You take 60 minutes out of the day and do something like that, and then it resonates. That could. So I'm fascinated. It sounds like you've leaned in way harder, and that's something, Tony, we need to kind of think about more. We're moving into a new facility next year that we're building. It's to be about 55,000 square feet.
Let's go.
And in that, we're going to have a 7,000 square foot like strength and conditioning, or it's a weight room, but
Nice.
I like to sound fancy. And then there'll be a wellness room that will have there'll be no windows. There'll be like LED lighting and like kind of a spa vibe, and there'll be saunas and cold tubs in there, like, and with locker rooms on either side. So hey, if you're having a stressful day, you go get a cold plunge in and hit the sauna, hit a pump. We'll have a supplement bar there, all included. So you want to make a protein shake, etc. So we're definitely leaning into that. I think more than a lot would, but there might be even significantly more opportunity. We've had a couple finance classes for people, which has been cool, but not to the extent that it sounds like you're doing. And that's really cool to hear your perspective on from a retention standpoint, but potentially also just the output of the employee.
Well, and I think there, like, and Chris, I would love to hear your thoughts on this as well, is like, you said the counter to this could be, oh, you're losing people that aren't then working 8 hours. And I think there, it depends on the industry and the nature of the business you're running. And to give an example for us, like we're running an e-com online store selling clothing, Chris. So now, if it's a labor job, like I used to manage our warehouse there, like if you get all your employees who are fulfilling orders, that's a very measurable, like, yes, we're pulling them off from ordering or from fulfilling orders. If they do a finance class for an hour and a half, you could actually measure how many orders then aren't getting fulfilled.
Yeah.
But why I bring that up compared to our HQ, where this is all stuff, Chris, like the marketing, the paid social, the operations, that's less of just a pure output job. And what you actually realize, and this is what I try to do with everyone that I manage, is it's actually, if they're a more grounded, well-rounded human being, their ideas get better. So it's less about the amount of hours they're putting in. That still does matter, that they're still putting in the requisite amount of time, and it's actually the quality of hours they're putting in. So if you can, and it's exactly what Chris is doing, like if you can add value to either their spiritual health, their basic well-being, how they show up for their families, they will come to work with better ideas. And I've seen this before. Like there are people that can get more done in 30 minutes than other people that get done in 8 hours. So you're actually playing, like, I think what you said, Bear, that's starting to die. That old school mentality of like, you need to be here for 8 hours just grinding away. Because when you actually manage enough people and you work through the various levels yourself, you realize, like, hey, when I'm efficient, I can get done in, like I said, 30 minutes, what used to be an 8-hour workday.
Absolutely. I mean, the art of getting in the zone and being impactful, like no matter where you're at, productivity, if you're like in our business out installing panels on the roof, which is very production based, or you're a permit or a proposal designer or a CAD engineer, like very output driven or whatnot. Like these same people, when they come and they just find more purpose in why they're doing these things every single day and bettering themselves physically and everything else. Like, I mean, just the amount of people that I've had come into my organization and lose over 100 pounds have like become countless, and where they're just like, man, I got to take care of my physical body because it is impossible to focus on all areas of life and for them not to impact each other, right? Like when you're disciplined at the dinner table, like we teach this all the time. When you're disciplined at the dinner table, you're going to be disciplined at the desk. When you're disciplined at the desk, you're going to be disciplined when little Charlie comes up and says he wants to play catch with you and you're dead for the day, and it's just creating this overflow of like the whole human approach, which it sounds like you guys are leaning into hard, which is ultimately what sets any great culture apart. I mean, it's the reason why we had a full-time chef and ping pong tables and competitions and gave away Tesla cars and all kinds of other things. It's just because it's like it's full buy-in, full recognition, like one heart, one vision, one direction, where people no longer feel like a slave owner mentality, but a true trust in ownership that we have their best interests at stake.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things you said earlier that I want to lean into a little bit is, you'd mentioned, kind of seeking your own professional development, and just educating yourselves in what sounds like a variety of topics. Maybe shotgun blast approach. You even talked about like flipping cars and all these other things. And I think there's a good lesson there for people that are listening, because I feel like people that maybe are in the hamster wheel have this perception that there's certain people that have achieved success and you're never going to be that person. That person's just elite and like I'll never be on their level. And there's this barrier to action of just getting out there and educating yourself and becoming more, like just knowledgeable on a variety of topics. And as you explore that, you're going to discover things that maybe you gravitate towards, that make you, give you the ability to potentially be one of those people that before you thought you never would become. Like for me, one example is like real estate. Like, it's not like it's this crazy thing, but I got like 6 properties now and it's a good cash flow business for me. I just read a couple books and started dorking out reading real estate articles. And I realized, wait, I can leverage the assets I have right now, get the bank to loan me money to buy another property, and I won't use any of my own money. And I make a quick little Excel spreadsheet and realize what the cash flow analysis is. And oh, by the way, you can write off the interest and yada, yada, yada. Before you know it, in 3 years, I have 6, short-term rentals that I'm renting out, and we're building a $16 million facility right down the street that we're going to own, right? That didn't take that. And it was to the point where as I'm reading, I'm like, everyone should know this because this is so obvious. I have a 3-year-old daughter. I'm like, when she's 15, like I'm going to teach her to be a little assassin with this stuff because I'm going to make sure she's very, financially literate on all of this. But that's just one example. So I just think there's this barrier to entry because people think, oh, that's not for me. I'll never become that. And if you just put yourself out there and try to, maybe get outside of your, comfort zone, and you'll eventually find something that hits. And then you will be in the 1%, because very few people are actually willing to do it. So that just resonated with me when you said that, because I just think there's so many people that they're not reaching their potential because they're not actively pursuing that professional development.
Yeah, I mean, the greatest decision that I ever made was to start investing in my personal education. So you talked a lot about, or you referenced my experience of like going and being in my paid education where I was going and studying and doing all these different things. But on top of that, in 2015, I made the decision that once a quarter, at least every 3 months, I would go and I would attend something that would further my education in a variety of different topics, whether it was trailer park real estate investing, whether it was marketing or a mastermind or coaching or consulting. And so since 2015, I've spent over $1 million on my personal education, non-traditionally. And, having those people like getting in the room, being around the people that opened up my ideas. Like one of my favorite examples from this was like it was in 2021, December 2021. I am flying down to Florida to pick up a Phenom 300 that I'm purchasing for cash, a 8-passenger jet, spending $6.5 million on this thing. And while I lined it up that we were going to go and close on it December of that year, and I looked for some sort of mastermind or something that I could attend while I was going down there, and I found a trailer park investing group that was in Destin, Florida, and so I fly down there and I'm attending this little workshop, and it's great. And I'm just an attendee in the back taking notes and everything like that. Come to find out, people figure out, like I had lunch with a couple people. They figure out that I'm there picking up my $7 million jet, and that I'm buying cash. And like people just freak out. They're just like, "What are you doing here? Like you're like." You're not supposed to be a student in this room. You're supposed to be teaching this room. And like for me, it was like never a question. Like I don't know anything about investing in trailer parks, so I'm here, right? Like and I think to your point is that one of the best things people can develop is a hunger for more knowledge and never be satisfied with where they're at. And so recently we've shifted the name of our podcast from the Founder Podcast to Next Level Pros, and it's indicative that the name Next Level is that success is not a destination. You never arrive at a point and say, I made it, it's done, it's over. Success is purely a trajectory. Like, what direction am I going? Like, even if I'm a billionaire and my trajectory is down, I am not successful. Or if it's maintaining, I am not successful. Like, true success is always on a trajectory of further education, further knowledge, further progression in your relationships or whatever it may be. And so, and there's always a next level, right? Like that's the biggest thing I've learned in being in these different groups. I hang out with this Harvard group where like 50 of my friends are billionaires. And the reason I hang out with this group is just because it just makes me think differently. It like I am no longer the big fish in the room or satisfied with my 2 different 9-figure exits that I've had. Now I'm thinking like, holy crap, how is my really good friend in Dubai doing 26 billion a year with 30% margins? Like, how is that freaking possible? Right. And so just understanding that education, learning and growing, it never stops. It's not a destination. You got to keep rocking.
Well, and I think I don't know if you've read the book, if either of you have read Range. I forget who the author is, but I bring it up because the whole thing is, to summarize it in 30 seconds, is that like becoming over specialized works for very few individuals, and it's actually better to like build a range of skill sets and interests that will eventually contribute to you being great at something. And of course, there's a ton of research to back it, as well as his own just kind of life work. And why I say that is I think people can hit a ceiling with what they're doing, or they think that like, oh, this is my job, I can only develop here, where it's like, I love the phrase, and my friend actually said it 10 years ago. He said, follow the energy. And what he meant by that is like, as long as you have a passion and are interested in it and have an innate like gut feeling that like, oh, I should develop here, you can do that. Like, don't not do it because, oh, this doesn't relate to my finance job. It's like, no, pursue those things. And then all of a sudden you'll realize, and it may take a decade, but you'll start to piece together these different interests that seem on the surface completely disconnected. But then you're building this range of skill sets that can then get combined to bring something to life that somebody that went so deep on one thing would have never been able to see. So it's a really cool, like, as you say about continuing your education, I always tell people like, follow your energy. Like if following your energy means just eating Cheetos on the couch all day, I would say don't follow that one too hard. But as long as it's something that you're genuinely interested in and there's room to grow within it, like don't be afraid to go deep on 10 different things over 10 different years, and don't beat yourself up thinking like, oh, I didn't specialize in one of them, because what I've found in myself and in others is that if you do that over and over, you will show up into a room and be able to connect dots that other people can't see. So it's just another thing I thought I'd throw in there, because I think what you're saying is so valuable about like continue your education, continue your growth. And why I say what I said is like, it doesn't need to just be one thing. It can be 15 different things, as you said, with like investing in trailer parks.
Absolutely.
Well, and I love that example. The fact that you are going to buy a $6.5 million jet, but you had the humility in the kind of you've never mastered your craft mentality of, oh, let me just like take an extra day down there and go to a trailer park seminar because maybe this will be something, can be another hustle for me. Like that right there is the example of why you're successful. That's a mentality, and you probably will never lose that. Man, that's such a strong lesson. I mean, and I love the fact that it was like such a like kind of random and hilarious topic. You know what I mean? If it was some like, jewelry convention or, like something, it'd be like, all right, whatever. But you were like, no, I'll freaking go to a trailer park convention. Like that is, you've never mastered your craft, and there's always something to learn. And I think to your point on success trajectory, you will never lose that trajectory if you keep that mentality. And that's, I mean, it's crazy when you look back at what you can do in 5 years. It'll blow your mind of where you thought you were here, and that was like the top of the mountain. And then you look back and you go, holy crap. Like, you can't even imagine what you can do in 5 years with focused effort. So I know that will of course, be the case with you with that mindset. That's freaking awesome.
Chris, I would love to ask, like, has there been, I think with anything in life, there's the good and the bad. And for you, I'd love to ask about like the shadow of success. Like, is there anything you've had to keep a focus on of as you've become successful and had these different, just very successful ventures that you've had to be continuously aware of like, oh, here's something that arose from that success that I need to stay aware of so that it doesn't blindside me at some point. Has there been any, I call it like any shadows that you've kind of consistently had to wrestle with as you've become more successful?
No, that's a great question. I think being self-aware is so very important. And like for me, I very much understand that I have an addictive personality. And so for me, I have to have very like strict boundaries in things that I do and rules that I self-impose, right? Like I think like self-imposed slavery is probably one of the best things that anybody can do, right? And for me, it's like uh, alcohol and those type of things that I've never ever participated in. I've never drank a drop of alcohol or anything in my life. The reason is because like those strict boundaries, I know how far off I would go if I ever went down that path. And similarly, like keeping God first and making sure that I do things like sacrifice and pay tithing. I pay 10% of my income to my church. I pay I constantly am giving back and like rechecking myself on a regular basis, going to third world countries and like just staying grateful and focused on my family. And so like for me, those are the things that have kept me grounded, really, is just God and sacrifice in my family, because I know just like the further you go, the further up you go, the farther you fall, right? And I've seen so many people have their lives destroyed by this appearance of success, and so I am consistently checking myself, asking myself the questions like, what's important to me? What are my true reasons for doing this? Making sure that it is not purely money driven. And so, but yeah, like luckily I've been able to keep myself out of the shadows, but I definitely know what I am capable if I were ever to go down that path.
What do you think? Some of the people that you've with the groups you kind of have, I'm sure, been exposed to. What do you think some of the trends are from people who get consumed and watch kind of their scaffolding fall on top of itself? What are some trends you see there?
Typically it is a lack of a belief in a higher being or a questioning there, which typically leads to a a unfaithfulness. Like for me, the reason I am faithful to my wife and my family is because I believe in a higher power, and I believe and I have an eternal perspective. If I were to lose that, it would be much easier to throw those things to the side. And so, and where it's just people work for the fruit rather than being the tree. Um, I learned a long time ago that the object of life is to be an incredible tree that's capable of producing fruit. Because fruit, it's funny. I have a small hobby farm, 23 acres. I have 9 acres of cherries, and the reason I love cherries is you can do everything right. You can water the tree, fertilize the tree, prune it, do all the right things. And a bad season, a late frost in the spring or whatnot, can completely ruin your crop. And if for those that focus on fruit only, which is money, success, numbers, and whatever, right? Like end results, the typical response to that type of situation in which the crop didn't produce would be to chop down the tree, right? This is a crap. This doesn't work. This isn't the right method for success, versus just working one more season and just being capable of producing fruit, right? Like I think the goal in life is just being the tree, being capable of fruit production, and not tying your happiness or your success to that output. And so that's really been the thing for me that's helped me to constantly is like not focus on the results, the cars, the whatever else. It's just like constantly being the tree that's able to produce those things. And regardless of whether they come or not, like I'm good. Like I'm happy. And so that's kept me grounded. Like when I sold my business, I bought a watch and a pimped out Mercedes Sprinter van, and like I could have gone and built or bought the biggest house in anywhere, and I just doubled down on where we're at and like focused on like, hey, this is those things don't mean as much to me, and so. But I think a lot of that roots from the fact that going through bankruptcy, and I think I would have been pretty haughty had that first business taken off.
Love that. Speaking of business, what's the biggest mistake you've ever made as an entrepreneur?
Biggest mistake I ever made out of an entrepreneur was not charging enough. Like I think that's where most entrepreneurs get it completely wrong. They just price themselves like whatever you think you should charge 2 to 3 times that. And I mean that really is what led to the first demise of my business, and like just being in it to appear to be successful, right? Like I doing it for the ego reasons. Like, look at me, Mr. Success. I think most business owners rob the growth capital of their business to go and satisfy their own ego, right? To have the car, the house, and everything else, when they should be doubling down on their marketing. And so that's what I did in my first business is I robbed the growth capital to have this lifestyle that I didn't deserve. And so I think that coupled with bad pricing was the biggest mistake I made.
How about private equity deals? I know there's a lot of times people can have buyer's remorse, particularly if they're still actively involved in the company, and maybe there's an earnout or something like that. But how has that gone? We might be going down that road here in the next 12 to 24 months. So you got any advice on that front?
Absolutely. So I think everybody should do it once. It is a bittersweet experience, especially if you were the founder and you built the thing from the ground up and bootstrapped it. Like it's your baby, and handing your baby over to somebody else, no matter how much money they put in your bank account, is a rough experience. And um, it's had the good, bad, and the ugly. Like we rolled some equity forward, and no matter who it is, they're not going to treat your baby the same way that you treated it, and that's tough. That's hard. But once again, I think it's kind of like a milestone or a pinnacle that every entrepreneur should go and experience. Like I'm a big just experience guy. Like I want to take one company public personally just to do it, and just to be a public CEO, and just to get trashed and tarnished by different analysts or whatever else. Like, not so much because that's what I desire, but I just need to go and go through it. And so, private equity, I'll probably never fully do that ever again. Maybe not. Maybe as an investor of a business, like, yeah, sure. But as a owner, operator, or founder, like, I prefer cash flow.
Love it.
Chris, I have one more question on my end. I think often you're trying to solve for specific issues or for us, like scale to that next level. What's that next ridge line, whether that's a number or it's baked into kind of your strategy initiatives. And a question I'd love to ask you, and I've asked other entrepreneurs, is a lot of times you convince yourself the solution to something is what you think it is, or you think you know the solution, only to find out with some time that like it was, whether it's a processy, a personnel, or cultural thing that actually unlocks the business and takes you to that next stage. And it's a lot of times, not to say always, not the thing you thought it was going to be. Do you have any specific moments where that was the case, or that the case where you had an unlock happen that was kind of counterintuitive to what you thought was going to get you to the next level? But in hindsight, you realize like, oh, whoa, that unlocked what we were doing here, and it wasn't on paper what we thought was going to get us there.
Yeah, and usually I was able to solve it differently because having outsider perspective. I think like that's why I am such a big proponent of like consultants and coaches and everything else, because like example, I back in 2020 I held a mastermind at my cabin, and I had Alex Hermosi and his wife Layla there, and Russell Brunson and a handful of other people. We were all just getting together and just scheming different things. And Alex was just like, dude, you need a CFO. And so it got me in, like, up until that point, like we'd always put off like wanting a CFO. So we started pursuing that. And then while we had an offer out to a CFO, he accepted the offer. And the day he signed it, we rescinded it. Because somebody else had come into the office and said, hey, and it was a guy that had a small piece of equity in our business. He's like, hey, how about instead of getting a CFO, why don't we go hire these two other executives? I think this would actually be the better solution. So we ended up doing that. And it was interesting just because like initially we thought it was to be a CFO, and that wasn't even our idea, right? Like we took and ran with that idea, but then we went and we ended up hiring a CMO and a controller. And we were able to get them for the same price that we would have paid a CFO, and less equity earn out for those guys. And that ended up just being an incredible move in our business because it helped me as the CEO alleviate a lot of the marketing oversight that I was doing in the business and get a lot of the benefits that we were looking for from a CFO with the controller. I don't know if that directly applies to your question, but like that's like one thing that I can think back of, like we thought we had the right solution. Even that solution came from somebody else, and we went a little bit different way, and it worked out really well.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Chris, I'm curious. You had said you've spent over $1 million on your own professional development, which I think is badass. If you could consolidate that into a summary, in what areas did you focus on that had the highest ROI for you, at least on a personal level, just in your overall well-being, or on a business level? Because I want to get more into that myself. I've been invited to a lot of these masterminds and things like that. I went to my first one this year. It was pretty cool. But I wonder, am I not leaning, hard enough into that? So from your perspective, what would you recommend for anyone?
So I recommend is like spend as much as makes you uncomfortable, right? Like if you're comfortable and you're spending on personal development, you're not doing enough. And so for me, like it's been being a part of the masterminds, it's being part of the courses, it's being part of like these different just areas, and the relationships that I have put into my corner have been like it's impossible to put a price tag on those. Right now I'm a part of a program called OPM. It's at Harvard, and it stands for Owners Presence Management. It's one of the best decisions I ever made. And essentially what it is, it's this high level executive education where you go and you live at Harvard for 3 weeks a year straight for 3 years. And you're with a cohort of, like, my cohort has like 165 people, and they're business owners and very successful business owners from all over. Like, there's minimum revenue thresholds, and then there's an application process and everything to be a part of it. And out of the 165 people in my group, there's probably close to 50 billionaires. And I made reference to, like, one of my best friends in that program. He does 26 billion a year in Dubai at 30% margins. And like, the experience of that, like, we do this cool, like, case study, and there's like a really cool education aspect to it, and you're really busy and you're in with like some of the best professors in the world and everything like that. But more importantly, you live there 3 weeks straight and have every meal and exercise and activity with people that would not regularly have time. And like, of the 165, only 33 are American. And so it's opened me up into this like crazy, like, international, worldwide network. And like, that experience at Harvard, I'm going into my third year. Next month, I'll be going for 3 more weeks, and then we'll be done. But like, the relationships, like I said, that I've been able to just harness from that group are unbelievable. And so that's one perfect example. But then all these other masterminds that I've been a part of, like, over the years, I became really good friends with Alex Hormozi well before Alex Hormozi became who he is on the internet today, right? And we were introduced back in 2018 at a mastermind that I attended up in like the mountains in Utah. And we hung out for 3 days straight, me, him, and Layla, became really good friends. And then it became like, every time we went to an event and we were at the same event together, we'd go and do dinner. And then he'd come and hang out at my cabin and different things like that. And so like, and then all of us, it's interesting because if you listen to Alex Hormozi's podcast, he'll reference that he went to a cabin up in the mountains, and that's where he realized that he was fishing in a pond and not in a big blue ocean. And that was my cabin, that he references to. And so it's just like cool to be a part of all these different intersections of so many incredible people's lives, and how many people have done that for me. And so yeah, dude, like, there's just so much power. And like I said, if you're comfortable in what you're spending, spend more, because it's really hard to put a price tag on the experiences and the relationships that you get from these great groups.
Love that. Yeah, it's ironic. I was actually my buddy's getting his MBA at Harvard right now, and he just literally 3 days ago, I was looking at that OPM program because he was like, "You should do this." So I went on the site and I was reading into it. So just selfish question: is it just 3 weeks a year, and then you like? I envisioned there's curriculum outside of that, and I was like, man, I don't know if I have time to like go back to school, but I figured it can't be that bad because these are owners and operators that, like, I can't be doing homework for 5 hours every night, sort of thing.
No, dude, it's tailored. It's tailored to high level executives that don't have time. And so like example, there is a small project that we have to have ready by the time we go in October, but it's probably only like a 6 or 7 hour project total. But when you're there like I mean, it's freaking like that. But then outside of that, we get together like once a month on Zoom. It's more of just like a check-in and how are things or whatever. But probably more valuable is like the visits in like for example, in February, I flew to India. A girl from my living group, she was getting married. Her dad's a billionaire. He rented out a beachside resort in India. I got to go and experience an Indian wedding. There were 15 of my Harvard group like there. And then I flew from there to Dubai and hung out with my buddy that, like I said, is doing 26 billion a year. Like, that's probably the only time commitment, is like the personal going, the things that you would want to be doing anyways, but not the homework that you're talking about.
Right on. Well, we'll see. I think we're above the threshold from a top line standpoint, so it would be kind of fun. And I actually have my GI Bill that I never use, so I could basically go for free, which would be pretty wild. But Well, cool, man. Well, hey, I know there's way more to the story with you, but to share some of your learnings, super cool. I know you're a busy man. Thanks so much, man. We appreciate it. Wish you all the best. Obviously, you got the right mindset. I can't wait to see what else you do. And love what you said about, the trajectory of success. We've talked about that before of otherwise things could just become a series of false summits. And there's really no summit, right? It's the mindset and the mentality you take towards everything you do. And as long as you do that, you're going to build, off of a good foundation. And like I said, that look back period of 5 years, you blow yourself away at what you can accomplish with some focused efforts. So we will try to emulate that here at Born Primitive as well. And we appreciate you coming on, man.
Thank you.